Welcome back. I thought that was really awesome. I think this next one I'm excited about because this is where we're starting to bring in the investors. So this panel is all about how do we financially support CDFIs from the position of being an investor. So you are going to now be in this moment with people who are leading their work in the banks, who are leading their work through the investment and investor angle. So we're going to be focusing on how their support of Black-led CDFIs speaks to any of the initiatives that have been created by their companies to open up the financial system or to create financial justice for Black businesses nationally and specifically in Florida as well.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank everyone for being here and participating in BBIF's 2021 Black Finance in Florida Conference. In the aftermath of George Floyd, social unrest, economic and social divide across our country, government, philanthropy, and business have all taken note of the important role played by Black CDFIs. We're very excited to be here today for a panel titled Financially Supporting CDFIs, the Investor Perspective. It's great to be joined by Lynette Bell, President of Truist Foundation, Byna Elliot, Head of Advancing Black Pathways for JP Morgan Chase, and Connie Smith, Senior Vice President for Small Business Growth Philanthropy at Wells Fargo. These are leaders from three of the nation's largest banks who have all made substantial investments in Black-led CDFIs. Thank you for joining us. So Lynette, thank you for being here. I'd like to start with you. How has the landscape for supporting CDFIs led by Black, Indigenous, and people of color changed over the recent days, recent year, in light of the pandemic, the economic and social justice crisis that we're facing?
Yeah, Bill, good afternoon, and thank you so much for that great question. We know that across financial sectors, the pandemic as well as the social unrest has had a huge impact on communities that are Black and indigenous and people of color. And we know that they're under-resourced. And so CDFIs have been the critical tipping point on ensuring that these communities and entities continue to thrive and survive. And we know that they are at the cutting edge of building strategic directions so that we can help capitalize those under-resourced assets in those communities, particularly as you look at small business. You know, one of the things that we knew as the pandemic first rolled on into the US, we saw a lot of businesses start to struggle early in the process. And now with this longer tail of the pandemic, and we talked to the CDC, the Foundation, and Johns Hopkins about the pandemic, as we were trying to determine what's the right investment structure to support entities like CDFIs, they said that the pandemic would have a long impact, which has come to fruition. And so 41% of small businesses were in jeopardy of not reopening. That was early on in the pandemic. And we know that it has been critically amassed that a lot of small businesses have permanently shut down or not returned or struggling to return in this environment. And Black-owned businesses are suffering at a greater pace. And so we know that CDFIs provide great technical support. They provide capitalization as well as grant funding to help support and build some level of sustainability as these small businesses continue to struggle. So CDFIs are really critical to our industry and to our economy. And as we put that spotlight on them, they really are on the cutting edge of understanding some of the nuances and dynamics that exist in those communities of color. And so financial institutions look at CDFIs as a clear investment tool so that we can help provide that direct support or indirect support to small businesses across the country. And as we look at BIPOC, we know that Black and Indigenous people of color continue to struggle when it comes to income and inequality, but small businesses are the fabric of our country and employ a lot of individuals. And even though there might be small with 50 or fewer employees, they still are the cornerstone of how local communities provide the regional economy that is necessary and needed. And so CDFIs are really critical and ones that we continue to see as part of that future in development and innovation so that we can continue to meet the needs as they are diversely divided in our communities.
Thank you, Lynette. That's great data, and I think we all see some of those dynamics playing out in our own markets. Connie, talk a little bit about what you're seeing and how the ecosystem has shifted and how it's influencing how you look at supporting these populations.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. And I too am so honored to be with this group today. So, Bill, as you introduced the question um, about the welcome and unprecedented focus on economic and racial justice, one of the observations that I've seen is that while the organizations that Byna and Lynette and I represent have had long histories of supporting CDFIs, there are new corporations that are learning about their role in the financial ecosystem. Large corporations, not financial institutions, not the usual supporters of the industry. Organizations like Google and Twitter and Netflix and Starbucks, and the list goes on. And they're seeking out how they can learn more about the industry and make investments. And of course, that's very welcome. The other observation I would have is that in addition to supporting individual CDFIs and the good work that they're doing, I think in the last 12 months, 10 months, 12 months, there have been some collaborative efforts that have really boosted the industry and their capacity to raise funds. I'm speaking of the Alliance for African American CDFI CEOs, OFN's Finance Justice Fund. I think these collaborative efforts are going to play a critical role going forward as we come out of this pandemic.
I think you're right. So Byna, we're in times that I don't think any of us would have anticipated. How does this world that we find ourselves in now, how's that shaping how your institution look at support for people of color?
So in terms of the role that JP Morgan Chase plays around advancing Black pathways and our commitment to people of color, we see this opportunity, which really sort of converged in June around the challenges in the systemic racism, both from a healthcare perspective and a financial and wealth equity perspective, really converging around really putting a spotlight on the challenges in our communities. And so I'm really proud that we stepped up in October with a significant commitment focused on the two communities that we think are the hardest impacted and have the least wealth and asset building resources available to them today, and that's Black and Latinx. While we know that there are challenges in all of our communities, there are clearly two communities that when you look at the gaps in net worth and home ownership rates, we've not seen gains in those in several decades, that we're focused on that. So we committed to $30 billion for those communities, and we're going to focus on 4 key areas that we think are prevalent to improving and closing that racial wealth gap. One is around affordable housing, both rental housing as well as home ownership. And then you think about small business, as Lynette talked about and Connie talked about, how important they are for creating wealth, creating opportunities for employment, and they are the absolute anchors in our communities. We want to make sure that we're supporting the entire ecosystem for small businesses, especially that are impacted in our communities are Black and Latinx. And then we also want to focus on the entire ecosystem, whether it's our minority depository institutions that we know have always been a bridge and a trusted resource in our communities around access to capital, as well as the CDFIs. And we want, and I would be remiss in not talking about or pointing out that BBIF, which is a great CDFI in the Florida market, has been an incredible partner for us. And then lastly, we want to make sure that we have create access to those services in all of our communities equally. So we're committing to putting up over 100 community branches in underserved communities to ensure that we have additional access points for people to get the education and the financial tools that they need to improve their wealth.
Oh, thank you. That sounds great. Connie, I'm going to come back to you. I'd like to hear about your diverse community capital initiative and other work that you're doing or plan to do to open up the finance system to create financing justice for Black businesses in the communities that they operate in.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill. Well, as you said, the Diverse Community Capital Program, actually, we launched that back in 2015 with a focus on increasing the capacity of CDFIs to increase their lending and technical services to diverse small business owners. We're really proud of the fact that we've been doing this work now for 5 years. So since the launch back in 2015, we've invested in 92 CDFIs, with 75% of those CDFIs having diverse leadership. And those awardees so far made more than 360 million loans to Black-owned businesses. And with DCC as our guide, last July, we launched our Open for Business Fund. This was created using our gross fees from our PPP processing last year. We expect to donate as much as $400 million to help small businesses stay open, and with a specific focus on those that are Black and Brown and Native owned. We've set aside $250 million of that specifically for CDFIs, and we expect that to translate into about $1 billion in available financing for those small business owners that work with a CDFI. To date, we've deployed $110 million of that commitment in philanthropic capital specifically to CDFIs, with 84% of that funding so far being focused on Black, Brown, and Native-owned small businesses. CDFIs are using that capital in different ways. Some of them are providing grants to small businesses to keep them open, or zero or low cost loans, other activities that help small businesses pivot in this extraordinary environment. And we'll continue to award grants through the Open for Business Fund throughout 2021. And in addition to funding to CDFIs, we've set aside funds for nonprofits that provide technical assistance to small business owners, as well as $100 million for more longer-term recovery and resiliency programs. Again, this is all focused on small businesses owned by Black, Brown, and Native small business owners. And then one last point, earlier this month, as the new round of PPP opened, Wells Fargo committed not to take a profit from our PPP lending, so we'll be investing more in small businesses going forward with that.
That's great news for those of us on the front lines of this work, so thank you. So Byna, you told us a little bit about some of the work you're doing at advancing Black pathways at Chase. Can you go in a little deeper and tell us how your plan, a little bit more about your plans to open up the finance system and create finance justice for Black businesses?
And so one of the pillars that we work on as part of our Advancing Black Pathways is business growth and entrepreneurship, which is really important, as Lynette said earlier, because small businesses are the lifeblood of our communities. So we're really spending a lot of time partnering with the National Urban League, the National Minority Supplier Development Council, Black Enterprise, as well as the Black Chamber of Commerce, to really provide quality technical assistance to help these businesses pivot. Lynette talked about the fact that over 40% of the businesses likely after the pandemic will not survive. And that's if we do nothing. And I think all of us collectively on this call are really focused on what things are levers we can pull to drive impact to these businesses and provide the right resources so that not only can they thrive through the pandemic, but maybe they can not only can they survive through the pandemic, that they could thrive through the pandemic. So when you think about what we could do, one is supporting the PPP program, both the first round and the second round, and ensuring that there's an equal access, or really focusing on it being intentional, ensuring that minority small business owners get access to those resources and those stimulus dollars, and also partnering with our CDFIs, which played a critical role in the first round, and we expect them to play a much more significant role in round two, and ensuring that we're providing the necessary supports that they need, grant dollars, and partnerships with them. So we have a robust CDFI initiative where we're going to invest over $300 million over the next 5 years with our CDFI partners, and over $100 million utilizing our new market tax credit resources to support CDFIs and small business lending and access to capital. So we know that it is critical that we leverage our small business partners, both as a bridge builder and also to provide the technical assistance that is needed to help our businesses get up and running and access eventually traditional capital.
That's great. Thank you. Lynette, what are you working on at Truist?
Yeah, so Byna and Connie did a great job talking about what the financial corp brings to the table. And as president of the Truist Foundation, when SunTrust banks and BB&T merged last year and started this process of building Truist, I started focus on the philanthropic arm, and Connie and Byna have done a great job talking about what they have provided. And just like their banks, Truist Financial Corp has a community development fund that we provide through Truist Community Capital, specifically for CDFIs, that provides that debt structure. Clearly, we participated in the PPP program, but when I started looking at this, when we were going through the merger, one of the things that we heard across the country as we hosted listening sessions was about how do we provide economic mobility? And again, particularly for small businesses, what's the vehicle that a financial institution can use to help propel businesses to that next level? And before the pandemic happened, we were all in, we were participating and talking to CDFIs because we knew they were the conduit to provide the capitalization that those businesses needed, as well as providing the technical support. So at Truist, what we did this year, post-pandemic or during pandemic, was create a new entity called Corner Square. And we actually invested philanthropic dollars of $40 million to establish Corner Square Community Capital, which will provide access specifically for CDFIs that support underserved communities and ethnically diverse small businesses. We thought that was the right response to helping finance businesses through the racial equity piece, but using the expertise and technical support that a CDFI brings to the table. Byna talked about that was the real crux of how businesses move forward, and we know that that is true. Every single institution on this call has worked with CDFIs. BBIF is a clear partner of ours, the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce. I mean, we can go down a huge list of entities that support small businesses, but we invested in Corner Square Community Capital, creating a different and innovative financial vehicle that says we'll take and participate with those CDFIs, freeing up some of their balance book capital so they could turn around and continue to leverage and invest and create more opportunities to help those businesses sustain themselves or recalibrate post-pandemic so that they can build that resiliencies and grow. And so we're helping CDFIs free up capital so they can do the business of what they do best, which is supporting small businesses. So we're really excited about having that opportunity to create something new and innovative in this marketplace.
Oh, that's exciting. And I'm really glad to know that you're working with my friends at the Rural Center. So thank you. So each of you have made strong cases around the importance of investing in Black businesses. As you know, BBIF is led by a person of color. There's a group of CDFIs across the country have come together to share lessons and to build a stronger case around the importance of investing in Black-led CDFIs. And if you look at Black-led CDFIs, many of us are facing very similar conditions to the businesses that we've been talking about. We're undercapitalized relative to our peers. My policy shop did analysis that showed that Black-led CDFIs are 2.5 times undercapitalized relative to our white-led peers. And you also have a reality that Black-led CDFIs are disproportionately going to be in communities where you have Black businesses. I think analysis show that 60% of the customers served by Black banks are Black, compared to 6% of the customers in banks that are not led by people of color, owned by people of color. So there's a pound for pound, Black-led CDFIs play a critically important role in serving the most vulnerable populations. And so I'd like to get a sense from you, does your work specifically target and include a strategy that focuses on Black CDFIs? Connie, I'll start with you.
Sure. Thank you, Bill. So, as I said, our Open for Business Fund, we are very much tracking the leadership of the CDFIs that we are serving through that fund. We've got right now about a third of them that we funded so far have been Black-led, and we expect that number to grow to include additional members of the group that you referenced, the Alliance for African American CDFI CEOs. I would also add that in addition to our Open for Business Fund, Wells Fargo did make a commitment to support minority depository institutions, many of which are also CDFIs. My colleagues here today have also referenced supporting these institutions, which are critical in the African American communities, providing mortgage and credit and all kinds of banking services. We've been spending the last few months since we made the announcement last March, learning about the unique needs of these MDIs, and we are excited that in this quarter we'll be making some formal announcements about our first investments. We're also going to couple the investments with some expertise on the part of our leaders delivering technical assistance to these MDIs based on this work that we've done to identify their needs. So definitely understand the significant role that these organizations play as trusted first responders in the communities that they serve.
Thank you, Connie. Lynette, share your thoughts. I've obviously shared my biases in terms of the importance of these institutions. How do you view it from your seat at Truist?
Yeah, so from my seat at Truist, one of the things that we know is that we can't do this work without partnerships, and partnerships that understand the fabric and nature of our communities. And so clearly we're honored to have the Black Business Investment Fund as a partner of ours. We are out of the gate with Truist Cares, which was a response to the pandemic. We committed $50 million, and out of that $50 million, 20% was dedicated to specifically supporting small businesses through CDFIs. Then we turned around and looked for those after the racial injustice happened. We started looking for CDFIs that, as you stated, Bill, are Black-led and Black-owned. And again, looking at BBIF not only as a partner, but providing us with some expertise. And so we will look and support small businesses through CDFIs, looking for those that have a high level of diversity, that are supported and led by Black and people of color. And so we know that that's critical to help reverse some of the systems that exist that keep some of the small businesses from receiving the capital they need. And so we're going to continue to do that work. I will say from our foundation standpoint, as I'm head of the Truist Foundation, that racial equity has to be embedded in the foundation. And so we're right now doing that work. And so this piece of how do we attest and do that? And we were talking earlier, like how do we as banks make the right choices and make the right moves? There's a lot of dollars being put out around racial equity, but we got to embed it in some of our systems that exist today so that when people apply for transactional requests from us, whether it's debt structures or grants, that we have a clear and equitable lens in the process. And so that's one thing I know I've committed to do, and that will happen for Truist Foundation.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Lynette. So Byna, you are obviously the name of your initiative speaks to Black Pathways. How do Black CDFIs fit into your strategy?
Well, when you think about that, advancing Black pathways, we are absolutely focused on not only the resources that impact our consumers, but the partnerships that we have with our not-for-profits and our CDFIs and our MDIs are part of that strategy. So I talked a little bit earlier around the $50 million that is dedicated and focused on CDFIs that are led and focused on minority communities, as well as MDIs that are Black or Latinx led. So those are really important components of it. But I want to go back and talk about the entire ecosystem. CDFIs, we talked about the fact that CDFIs don't have enough resources, Bill. When you think about the entire ecosystem around capital, whether it's venture capital, Series A, C capital, all of those, when you look at the entire system, is under supported for minority ventures and opportunities. And so we're taking a broad look at the entire ecosystem for small business and realizing that there are other ways we need to provide capital so that there's really that component of capital for every phase of the business, whether you're a startup, whether you're in expansion and growth, whether you're more traditional and smaller and maybe we'll work with a CDFI. We have to support venture capital, seed capital, as well as our CDFIs and our MDIs. And we're going to do that work over the next few years and broaden and improve that 0.01% of organizations that are Black get access to those initial capital sources. We need to improve that. And we're also going to work really closely with our CDFIs to grow and expand those that are serving Black communities and Latinx communities. And one of those examples we have is our Entrepreneurs of Color Fund that we launched in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, where we show that when we partner with those CDFIs that are focused on those communities, we can incrementally provide additional access to capital, and they're far more successful than our traditional CDFIs. So it's so important to have those targeted partnerships with CDFIs that are led by Black and Latinx leaders, but also that the resources are focused and solely dedicated to those communities we want to have impact on.
Oh, thank you, Byna. That is fantastic. So I want to thank each of you for joining us in the incredible perspectives that you shared today. I want to wrap up now by asking you to give me your sense of whether this is really different. Black CDFIs and organizations and challenges facing them have been around for a long time, but the level of support that we're seeing now has not. So is now different. Will this be an announcement or will this work be sustained over time? Connie, what do you think?
Gosh, Bill, that's a great question. And so I'm an optimist, and I believe that it's going to be sustained. I believe the awareness of the disparities is unprecedented, and I believe the interest in making the correction, in moving towards solution, is also unprecedented. And so I'm hopeful.
Thank you. Byna?
I am absolutely in agreement with Connie. I am absolutely hoping that it will be sustained, but I also think it's important to really have strong accountability and metrics in place to ensure that the commitments that were made, between June and September and October of last year, that we as communities and partners really hold each other accountable and are transparent and having the right dialogue to make sure that not only Do we meet those commitments? That we sustain them, but that we show meaningful impact and outcomes. I know at JP Morgan Chase, one of the things I was extremely impressed with was the fact that we have clear metrics and accountability around the commitments we made.
Great, thank you. What about you, Lynette?
Yeah, I would agree with the ladies that sustainability is key to success. And at Truist, we believe our mission is to inspire and build better lives and communities. The connectivity for building better communities, particularly for small businesses, is CDFIs, and they are the ones that are going to help propel that sustainability.
Let's hope that's where we're heading. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Again, I really want to express appreciation to each of you for sharing your time with us today and for your contributions to communities of color and to CDFIs that are serving them. I want to invite everyone to join us afterwards for a question and answer session by clicking on the response button below. Again, it's been great to be here with BBIF. Thank you.